Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. India has firmly rejected what it described as baseless observations made by a UN expert on Myanmar, who claimed that refugees from the Southeast Asian nations were under severe pressure after the Pahalgam terror attack. New Delhi denounced the remarks as a prejudiced and blinkered analysis. Delivering India's statement on the human rights situation in Myanmar during an interactive dialogue in the third committee of the UN General Assembly, Dilip Saikai said that India strongly rejected the observations made by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Myanmar, Thomas Andrews. But what was detailed in the report and in fact referred to the April 22nd Pahalgam terror attack, stating that following the attack on Hindu terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir, refugees from Myanmar have been under severe pressure in India, even though no individual from Myanmar were involved in the attack, according to the report. Refugees in India told the Special Rapporteur that they have been summoned, detained, interrogated and threatened with deportation by Indian authorities in recent months. All right, let's talk about this and how baseless this sounds and feels. Ambassador Veena Sikri, former diplomat, joins us on the broadcast. Major General Rajan Kochar, senior defense expert, also with us on the show. Mr. Sumit Peer, political commentator, is with us on the broadcast. And last but by no means the least, Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, with us on the show as well. Professor Nalapat, I'll begin with you. Well, once again, it seems like some sort of an agenda to demean and disparage India's secular fabric, and this time, putting the people who from Myanmar who live in India as the focus of this bias. Your thoughts on this, sir?
Look, I'd like to point out that the one glaring error in the UN official's report was that he completely overlooks the factor of terrorism. I mean, he is taking only the Rohingya point of view. The point of view is given by the Rohingyas, and the reality is that, you remember, there was an exodus of Rohingya from Myanmar. Why did that take place? Because they used to attack Hindus quite a lot there, and then later on they began attacking the Myanmar Buddhists as well, and that's when a very strong reaction came. Now, I think India has been a very generous host to countless Rohingya people, countless. They're in colonies all over India, north, south, east, west, you name it. They're in colonies in Delhi, colonies in Bombay, colonies in Bengaluru, in all these cities. And the reality of the situation is, unfortunately, there's a tendency for extremism to generate within that particular community. And I'm not talking about the Muslims, I'm talking about the Wahhabi element. And the Wahhabi element is unfortunately very active among the Rohingya refugees. So the reality is, India has got to take precautions. India has got to question people, find out if they had any role in a terror attack, to foil another terror attack, to ignore these points, to ignore completely this terror angle, and to paint the Rohingyas as 100% completely innocent. Well, that is absolutely incorrect, as the historical record will show, as the terrorism counter record will show. So I'm frankly unhappy at this kind of a report. It has given a very one-sided view, and frankly, this is the kind of report that basically incentivizes terror groups to strike, in the belief that international organizations will stand with them and not with the countries that are basically taking action against them. So I would like to say it's a very disappointing report from the UN's point of view, and that's why the UN credibility of the UN is going down, except for a few like bodies such as UNESCO. And the reality is that, as far as India is concerned, we have nothing to be apologetic about. The fact of the matter is, we are afflicted with terrorism, which has been repeatedly inflicted on innocent people. And I think it is an extremely bad taste to bring in a terror attack, and to bring in a terror attack which created so many so many, I mean, people without a spouse. And it's very unfortunate. And if I may say so, it's not at all proper that those who suffered in this attack should be showcased in this manner, and that too in an obviously wrong manner. Thank you.
You're right, sir. Ambassador Sikri, in fact, India is not a member or a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention. The people who have come from Myanmar as refugees have been in India solely and only because of our humanitarian outlook. The UN has never, complimented that or commended that. Pakistan does not have any of these refugees, but they've failed to, in fact, condemn Pakistan. Is this another instance of, the bias that the UN has pledged to exercise against India?
Biased report, and in fact when this report was released in New York, India's delegation to the UN General Assembly, in fact a BJP member of Parliament, Dilip Saikai, he made a very strong statement in the relevant committee opposing the biased nature of this report and pointing out that it was completely unwarranted. Now you must know that the Rohingya refugees who came to India, they're supposed to number around 40,000 in total number, maybe many more, but this is the official number. Some of them, they came in after 2017 when there was this attack by the Rohingyas in Myanmar, in the Rakhine state, on Hindu families living there, and then subsequently on the Myanmar army members, and the army members then retaliated, and the Rohingyas then left Myanmar in large numbers. Many of them, or 1 million of them, are actually in Bangladesh. A number of them have come to India, and some of them have refugee status cards from the UN, although we don't recognize that. But still, for India, the presence of any illegal immigrants, we don't go by the religion of the illegal immigrant, we don't go by any other designation except that the person is an illegal immigrant, and India is fully within its rights to deal with illegal immigrants in our country who are present illegally in keeping with Indian laws. So that is exactly what we do. We do know, for example, that in USA, the US government deals very strongly with all illegal immigrants there, and they are being dealt with in accordance with the American laws. So that is why every country has the full right to deal with illegal immigrants in keeping with the laws. And that is what has happened. But I can tell you that there is an organization behind all of this, which was even behind the attacks by the Rohingyas on the Hindus and so on. That was the ARSA, the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. It's the Pakistan-led or Pakistan-created terrorist organization, because it is created by a Rohingya living in Karachi, and this organization actually instigated those attacks in 2017, which led to the mass exodus of Rohingya refugees into Bangladesh. And I must tell you a very interesting point, that this instigation of the attacks which led to the exodus of Rohingyas happened just at the time when Aung San Suu Kyi, who was then state councillor, had requested former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan to make a report on how Myanmar should deal with the Rohingyas living there, because there's always been a problem of citizenship with the Rohingyas in Myanmar. And Kofi Annan had submitted the report. It was released on this day. It presented a very good option, a way out on how the Myanmar government could deal with the issue of Rohingyas and give them citizenship or not give them citizenship. The whole issue had been analyzed in detail. And at the point when this report was released, we saw that the ARSA instigated Rohingyas launched the attack on the Hindus, on the Myanmar army, and then after the retaliation to that attack on the Rohingyas, they then left Myanmar in very large numbers and came to Bangladesh for the main part, but also into India. Now, I think that India, again, has been absolutely patient. There has been no discrimination. All illegal immigrants are dealt with in the same way. We don't look at the religion of an illegal immigrant. We just look at his or her status for living in India. And I think we are fully within our rights to do that, because we do know that the very large number of illegal immigrants from Bangladesh, for example, from other countries, create a law and order problem for India, create an economic disparities within India. They affect the jobs for the local, for our own citizens. So this has been a big problem. It's completely uncalled for that a person who is at one point actually a member of the Democratic Party in the USA, but was actually, I think, also in the Congress at one point, but today he is a Harvard academic, and he has put out this report, very biased, possibly being fed information from totally wrong sources and trying to put India in a bad light. Absolutely, this is the sole purpose of this report, to link the Pahalgam dastardly attack on tourists, on innocent tourists in Pahalgam, to the treatment of Rohingyas who are illegal immigrants in India, is something that only somebody like Pakistan and ARSA could have thought of. Because to get themselves away from this blame for the terrorist attacks, and we know that they are the source of the terrorist attacks. We have even been able to eliminate the people, including somebody from the Pakistan from the Pakistan army, who came in and then conducted these dastardly terrorist attacks on the innocent tourists in Pahalgam. And then today, to find this absolutely convoluted idea and link with the Rohingya refugees is something unbelievable, uncalled for, and deserves to be opposed in the strongest possible words. Our Member of Parliament has spoken very strongly and unequivocally in the UN committee on this subject.
Sumit, your reaction to this falsification of facts? Now we know, we live in India, we know what happens, what kind of news we in fact have to deal with and consume. This UN representative is obviously acting from a point of being influenced by powers that be, and does not actually paint the right picture in front of the world. But that's exactly the problem that India has had to deal with.
Vineet, thank you very much for having me on your show. Good question, sir. And my fellow panelists have spoken a lot of it, so I'm not going to get into kind of repeating that. But let me put some other perspectives to it. The first and the most important thing is illegal is illegal. We don't have a tolerance for religion-based illegals, right? Illegal is illegal, and it will be dealt with illegal. That's point number one. Rohingyas are described as terrorists even in Myanmar. Myanmar identifies them, describes them, and kind of designates them as terrorists. So, third point. Now, is UN such a useless organization by now? Has it lost all the relevance? Is it older than the relics of the dinosaur era that today anybody can feed any information, it can come out of UN? Then US is only, we used to say it's toothless and clawless. We have to say they are older than they are more irrelevant than the dinosaurs of the today's era. Now, the question here is that, is Pahalgam attack being kind of whitewashed under the Rohingya, so-called Rohingyas are Muslims? So do they want us to treat Rohingyas differently because of the fact they are Muslims? Because they are Muslims, they will come and attack you, they will come and kill you. Bhai, Musalman hai, kuch nahi bolna hai. Hey, go and come and then talk like this. Na? If even if Muslims come and kill you, then you are not allowed to do anything. Look, Pahalgam attack was targeted at Hindus. They killed everybody, naam pooch ke Vineet. There's no doubt about it. We did Operation Sindoor, we did what we had to do. We know Pakistan's SSG was involved. We know even possibly there were some Middle Eastern, in my personal opinion, some Middle Eastern groups involved. But forget that. They identified the name, they asked the person, and they killed the person. They killed the person because he was a Hindu, he was a non-Muslim. Now, in that kind of a scenario, if there are these Muslim terrorists called Rohingyas here, and if even the Indian government is acting a bit tough on them, do you think Indian government is not under the right and obligation and duty to protect your and my life, and the millions of people are watching this broadcast their life? Do you think we are cannon fodder for Islamic terror and Islamic jihad who can come us today from Pakistan, tomorrow somebody from Middle East, tomorrow somebody from Rohingya? Doesn't this Andrew know there's a concept called Ghazwa-e-Hind? Doesn't he know how many radical Muslim terrorist organizations exist in the world? Is he blind to what is Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, and what does ISI and ISPR do? Doesn't he know who is that Mullah Munir, the Osama bin Laden with uniform? Now, all the attacks which have happened in India so far, take out all the list, by 30 saal, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. How many Christian terrorists are there? Possibly zero. How many Hindu terrorists are there? Possibly zero. All the terrorists which have done these attacks or done these religious killings have been related to Pakistan, and they have been Islamic terror, which is the manifestation of Islamic terror. So if those designated terrorists by Myanmar called Rohingyas are illegal in India and we want to be kind of a bit tough with them, how does UN get pissed off? Why does you, who the hell is UN to talk to us? Mat karo. Have they paid the price of it? Now, when they are going and starting these wars everywhere in the world, where did America find the weapons of mass destruction? What did they do with Iraq? Did they find anything? Why did they hang Saddam Hussein? Wasn't he a Muslim? You can't have one set of rules for yourself and one set of rules for ourselves. And there is nobody who can dictate India what to do, what not to do. And sorry, sir, if you think somebody is Muslim, he will have privilege, will get special kid gloves, correct me, because yaar, rongia kuch nahi hai, Sina bolo, Musalman hai, haath mat lagao. It's as simple as that. Why they have so much of bleeding hearts for Muslims only? So why should India take the brunt of Islamic terror and be so nice to them? Why should we do it? What is the reason for us? Do we want our people to be killed? Do we want our daughters to be widowed? Do we want our, the father of an 11-year-old daughter to be shot at point blank range? Remember the wife of Manjunath ji? Remember her sentiment, jaake Modi ko bolna? We want to keep on hearing them every day. Will now this Andrew come and do it? Now, this is the utter hypocrisy of this antique, outdated organization which should be in Smithsonian Museum called United Nations, and they are these people who are absurd, who have lost kind of humor. And if these people are so naive, if a group of NGOs which is kind of influenced or which is financed by somebody, they can come and feed the narrative, and these people are so naive, they will go and print it as it is. I mean, I think the latest trainee in your organization should take over his job. Find the latest trainee which has joined NewsX and give him his job. I think he or she will do a much better job than this person. Okay. We need this all systematic bias which is being pushed against us, and somehow, because are we Hindus and should we take all the brunt, or because we are Hindus and they are Muslims, we should keep quiet? These are the questions which we should be asking them. We reject this outrightly.
All right, we reject this. We definitely do. General Kocher, your assessment of this incessant bias by not only the Western media but the UN as well. Don't remember reading a report by the UN of similar conditions or perhaps worse conditions in which Hindus have been living in Pakistan, sir. I don't remember that being a concern for the United Nations in a very, very long time.
Thank you, Vineet. I think when you are the last speaker, I think you have the most difficult of tasks to actually sum up this entire your conversation. I will actually take it up in the realm of national security. See, the National Intelligence Agency is entrusted with a task. And what is that task? The task is the internal security and the national security of the nation. You can be a Rohingya, you can be a Muslim, you can be a Christian, you can be Hindu. We don't believe in any caste or a religion. It is the antecedents of that person and the kind of activity he is indulging within the nation. So my first point which I want to actually bring out here is that the security agencies are doing a task. And in doing that task, if they find a particular group of people who are Rohingyas, who are indulging in anti-national activities and they have been shunted out of the country, so be it. So we should not get biased or we should not get pressurized by these agencies, because a strong rebuttal has already been given. But the second important aspect is, in the last 1 or 2 years, I'm seeing a trend now of trying to pose a narrative at the international level, targeting our secular nature of our work and the democracy and the type of democracy we are actually functioning in. And certainly, if an agency like the UN is coming out with this thing, it casts a question mark on the credibility of the United Nations. As you mentioned, that Hindus in Pakistan and what is happening in Balochistan today, I would go a step further to that. What is happening in Balochistan, the enforced disappearances of young boys and girls which are taking place, and the Pakistan army is whisking them away, and they have a anti-terrorist law now uh, which gives them the power to arrest anybody for a period of 90 days without an FIR, without a judicial review. So is that valid in international law? And has the UN questioned that even for once? So I think there is a vested interest, there is a mandate which has been given to certain people in under the garb of the United Nations, because I think it is an agenda of a country. I would not like to name the country on your channel, but it is very, very apparent that it is under the garb of that kind of a thing to pressurize India and to cast aspersions on our integrity, the way our functioning is taking place. And my last point is that a Pahalgam attack, can it be linked to these kind of activities? They are absolutely two distinct events. Pahalgam actually happened, it has got no communal linkages, that the security forces are only looking for a particular community to target or to take revenge on Pahalgam. It is not so, because the functioning of the NIA, if you would have seen, and the functioning of the intelligence agencies is a totally unbiased way they work. They work under the purview of the law, and whenever a person is arrested, he is given a due opportunity to prove that he is innocent. So I don't think we should get pressurized by these narratives, because these narratives have a habit of recurring again and again. We have seen it happening in Northeast also. In Manipur also, we saw the interference of certain people who were training the cookies in drone warfare and things like that. And this equipment was actually coming. And if you remember, the Foreigners Act was enforced in these areas to stop a visit of foreigners into specific areas of Northeast. So I would see it as a security problem, a national security issue, and I think all the panelists have spoken very beautifully to condemn this particular statement or report, which is absolutely a biased one, and I think our government should not get duly perturbed about such biased reports.
Those are strong words, sir. Let me take a reaction from Professor Nalapat. Professor Nalapat, General Kochhar has a solid point that Pahalgam and the Rohingya issue are distinct and separate problems. Anybody who tries to mix them is trying to mix chalk and cheese.
Well, I'd like to completely agree with the general. The fact of the situation is, unfortunately, terror networks are well funded, extremely well funded, and unfortunately, in Nepal, for example, or other locations, even in India, people of different communities are used as facilitators of the terror machine. So this is a sad reality, and the fact is, we are living under the shadow of this reality every day, thanks to a hostile neighbor controlled by a very hostile Wahhabi military, a military that's been steeped in Wahhabism since the time of Ziaul Haq. So the reality of the situation is, India has to take precautions, and I may point out we have very large numbers of Rohingya, and in Myanmar they sought their own state, and that is why the Myanmarese also reaction came, besides the fact there was an attack on Buddhists. So this is, this is, as the General Kochhar says, it's nothing to do with community. It's everything to do with, frankly, an embrace of terrorism. These methods are absolutely out of place in any country, in any democracy, and in case this kind of an attack, a horrible attack like the Pahalgam attack, took place in his own country, I wonder what this particular UN rapporteur would say. Would he write a report justifying the attack, as he has done in the case of India, or does he regard India as a separate case from the United States? I mean, children of a lesser god, so to speak. And in that case, I can tell you, there's nothing more to add. The reality of the situation is, Terror is a reality we have all got to live with every day of our lives. We don't know in which market, in which house, in which shop, in which workplace the terrorists will strike. And taking precautions against that terrorism is absolutely essential for any government. And to condemn a government for taking these precautions, say, is showing crass hypocrisy. And my last point is this particular moderator, I think he should have added a paragraph in the report that the country he comes from, the US, they should open its doors to the Rohingya and welcome as many of them as are wanting to come to the US. Why doesn't he do that? Because he recognizes inwardly the threat posed by extremists within that community. So he's giving advice to somebody else that he's not ready to follow in his own country, if I may say so.
You're quite right about that, sir, and that's hitting the nail on the head. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this extremely important and eye-opening discussion. We take a short break now. We'll be back.